Hey everyone, this is Keith Scott from out in Sydney, Australia. I'm one of the voices of Bullwinkle J. Moose. It's time to watch Relentless and Unstoppable. And so give it up for your main hosts, Douglas Kenny and Andy McPhee.
Hey everybody, this is Doug Kenny and welcome to Relentless and Unstoppable. We have another amazing guest coming on the channel today, so please hit like and subscribe. And after this episode, please stay tuned to the RNU channel for more amazing guests. Let's get this on!
Hey everybody, how you doing? Just a quick little share of why I started Relentless and Unstoppable. It was for one very simple reason, because of Doug Kenny. Nothing to do with me at all, zero. I was just coaching Doug, and he took on the coaching and mentoring, and he made all the changes. He took all the suggestions from his parents as well as my coaching, but it was all about Doug, his breakthrough and his weight loss, his willingness to accept that he is dealing with high functioning autism and other issues, but he's never quit, he's never given up. So we did one interview with him to share his story, and then we decided to start interviewing other people. And Doug has now taken over the whole channel, and he does all the interviews, he runs everything. He's just an amazing young man. So RNU was born from simply what an amazing young man Doug is, and his story needed to be shared.
Yeah. I've noticed that there's something on your chest, and that's evidence that, that's what she went through, everyone. You know, it's a really painful disease, isn't it?
It really is. So, to give you a little more backstory, Douglas, if you'll indulge me, I'll kind of tell you my whole story is,
Pleasure.
when I was 5 years old, my mother actually had an aortic dissection. So this was 1990, and it was January 2nd, 1990. I was very young. I have two older sisters, and my mother was getting her tires changed at Firestone, and she never came back home. And my dad was gone, and my grandmother was still there after the holidays. So it was all really unique circumstances. And so eventually we were told that mom was not doing well and we needed to go say goodbye to her. She had lost her father in 1979 to an aortic dissection that was not caught. He called his doctor with some massive heartburn, and he unfortunately kind of ignored the symptoms, never went to a hospital, and passed away in his front lawn. And so my mother, when she had her dissection, was able to say, no, my father died of an aortic dissection, and that changed everything. And she survived, and we've had her for many years since. And it was always the big bad wolf in my family, Douglas. It was something that we didn't really understand. It was something that we knew might come for one of us, because we were clear that this is a genetic issue, and it is considered a autosomal dominant genetic issue, which means every single one of my mom's kids has a 50-50 chance. So she has 3 kids. It doesn't mean 1.5 of us are going to get it. It means with each one of us, it's like flipping a coin. And that's the best we could do at the time in 1990. We didn't have any of the typical syndromes that lead to aortic dissection. The most well-known is called Marfan. Very tall, very skinny, long fingers, a very large wingspan. The person I always bring up as being Marfanoid is somebody like Abraham Lincoln, right? Very tall, very skinny, long fingers. Mm-hmm. And then there's also a disease called Loeys-Dietz syndrome. And then there's also vascular Ehlers-Danlos. I didn't have any of those genetic syndromes. No one in my family did. My mother didn't, even though she dissected. And so for a long time, we were in this group called the thoracic familial aortic syndrome. So something was happening in my family, but we didn't know why or what was causing it genetically. So I got in touch with the John Ritter Research Program and the John Ritter Foundation in 2010 when my mom had to go back in for more surgery. And at that point, I guess I was 25 years old, and I was connected with Tracy Benson at the John Ritter Research Program. And she told me that you need to go get an echo. Your sisters need to go get an echocardiogram. And here's what you need to tell your doctors, that you've had an aortic history and all of that. So I went to the doctor and I got a baseline echo. When I chose to become pregnant at 30, we were concerned. We made a birth plan that I was going to have a C-section and all these things. But unfortunately, I didn't do enough advocacy on my side. Right, Douglas? So
Yeah.
I told every doctor that I had that I was at risk. But again, I didn't have any of these known genetic causes that popped. And so I went in with high blood pressure. I got an echocardiogram at 20 weeks pregnant and I was okay. And then I went in for high blood pressure brought on by pregnancy. I was working for American Heart Association at the time. And they put me on bed rest. They sent me home when I realized they didn't have preeclampsia. So then I ended up going to my house and being on bed rest. And it was August 30th, 2018, when everything changed. I woke up with a searing pain in my chest. And I told my husband something was really wrong. And when I stood up to go to the restroom, my right leg went numb. And that's when I knew something was horribly wrong. So we grabbed the go bag, which if anyone on listening to this knows that the go bag is very important to the birth plan. And we went to the hospital that I was supposed to go have my son. And they said, "You're not in labor. Maybe he's sitting on your sciatic nerve." And I said, "No, my mother, I'm in a lot of pain. I had a lot of chest pain and back pain at this point, which are classic signs. Back pain is a classic sign for aortic dissection." And I said, "My mother had an aortic dissection. We need to move down this path." And my OB was the one who ordered my CT. And I was told within about 20 minutes that I was having an aortic dissection. And today was baby's birthday, basically. We had to get him out so that we could fix me. And they decided at the hospital I was at, they were very capable, but this was a very complicated surgery because we were going to be doing a C-section and an aortic replacement on the same table. So they decided that they were going to care flight me from Plano to Dallas, which is only about a 15-minute care flight. And that I had 14 minutes before the care flight was there. And that's when they sent the chaplain in. And I am a woman of faith. And so I prayed with the chaplain. And the doctor came in and said, "It's time for you to say goodbye to your husband. It is likely you or your son may not make it through this surgery. It's massive. You could bleed out. There's a lot of complications." And so I said goodbye to Kyle, my husband. We had only been married for 3 years at that point. I told him all the things I wanted him to tell my family, particularly my mother, because I know she would feel guilty because this was her genetic line, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they flew me off, and my husband collapsed on the floor. And I got to the surgical suite, and they had made the second surgical suite a NICU, a temporary NICU for my son. And I looked at the doctor and we prayed, and I looked at the anesthesiologist and he said, "We're not going to let you die." I said, "Good, because I have 2 boys to take care of, my husband and my son."
That's a lot more, positive compared to the other one.
Right? Right.
And when you think about it, before I let you get back to what you were going to say, when you think about it, it's a good thing that it was a C-section rather than a D-section. That's just a joke, by the way.
No, I was smiling. That was really good. It took me a second. That was really, really good.
What were you going to say?
No, that was funny. So I woke up I guess 7 hours later, and I was in the ICU. I knew I'd made it, but somewhere deep in my bones, I knew my son had made it. And so I don't remember seeing my husband. I was still really out of it when I saw him, and I saw my parents. I don't remember seeing them, but I remember seeing my sisters. And I was intubated at the time, so I couldn't talk. And so I was trying to talk because if you know me, I just can't keep my mouth shut. And I just kept asking people, how big was he? How big was he? And because he was he was a little early. He was full term, but he was a little early. And I was only in the hospital for 6 days, which is insane. And even with the history, I was so woefully uneducated on this disease. And I would say I was the most educated of my family. I just didn't take the time to fully understand the nuances of this disease. And I ended up being home, convalescing, and I was back at work in 3 months. And I had a brand new baby. And I had a couple of complications about a year later with a sternal infection. But since then, sometimes on a daily basis, sometimes I'll forget that I had a dissection. But most of the time I don't, because I am now the CEO of the John Ritter Foundation, and I tell my story a lot of times to show people that you can survive it. And to kind of circle back, my mother is now 72 years old, and she had her first dissection when she was 38. And so I kind of have a roadmap of the full life, because she had a lot of trauma. She was the first one in our family that had survived. And so she used to always tell herself, she didn't tell me till recently, like, just let me get to Lauren's high school graduation. That's my oldest sister. Just let me get to Meredith's high school graduation. Let me get to the wedding. Let me see my first grandchild. So those were kind of her benchmarks. And here she is at 72 years old, outliving some of her friends with a Dacron aorta and a big old scar that looks just like mine.
Gee, that's all we have for Relentless and Unstoppable. So tune into the next episode to hear more amazing stories from amazing guests. This is Keith Scott from Sydney, Australia, saying so long, and I'm smarter than the average bear. Gee.